discarding dilapidated belief systems, which I believe is a phrase you've used that I really like. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that, how you became an atheist, and maybe even where that fell in the timeline of discovering sex work, as you did become an exotic dancer so early on?
Well, I don't know that there was some magical moment that I became an atheist. I think that it happened very, very early. When I was a kid, I was raised, in a Catholic family, or semi-Catholic. I call it like soft Catholic, because we didn't really go to church, except sometimes on holidays and weddings and funerals. And I never made it to communion. So even when we did go to church, and I'm the last of 6 kids. So my 5 brothers and sisters, the ones that were still around when I was, they would go up and get their cracker and their wine. And I would sit back like, the little heathen, and not really, we just never really pursued that part of it. And for me, I was always I was really kind of a pain in the butt as a kid, because I asked a lot of questions, and there were a lot of things that just didn't jive for me. Where I would ask things and people would be able to explain it up to a point. And then when you keep asking, and then you start getting into like morality questions, well, why did God flood the whole world? And then they start getting mad. And then you get sent to the corner, and then they don't want you in Sunday school anymore. So for me, I really called crap pretty early. Especially when it came to the blood sacrifice and the rituals and things like that. So the real base of Christianity for me was debunked really pretty much with like Santa Claus, because the answer for Santa Claus was magic, and the answer for God was also magic. And so I think I kept like the higher power, spirituality, there's something else out there kind of vibe for a while, out to my early 20s. But atheist for me was a bad word. That was like worse than the F word. Sure. You were going to hell. You were a Satanist. Now I think that's actually really funny, because you literally can't be like a Satanist if you don't believe in. So anyway, which is always funny when you tell people that, because they're like, what? Just think about it. Just take 2 seconds and think about it. Yeah, it's pretty quick. And when I really decided that I was an atheist, and that I would identify as an atheist, is when my nephew passed away. He was 8. He had cancer. They'd been treating him for about 6 years. And of course we prayed, because what do? I mean, you can't do anything. You can go and get the treatments. You can listen to the doctors. You can give him the best life he can have. And you can pray. I mean, what else can you do? And so that was the last time that I really prayed. And when he passed, that was really the point when I started looking, and I started like educating myself. And that was when I found out the definition of atheist. And I was like, well, that's not scary at all. In fact, it's really not even much. All it says is that you don't believe in any gods, not even the God or this God or that God. I'd love to believe in Thor, but Chris Helmsworth will do.
Yeah, that'll work.
But I started reading, and I first started reading about souls and consciousness. And then I saw, well, there's no proof that there's actually a soul. And I actually found comfort in the fact that there wasn't somebody that made my nephew suffer for 6 years. Mm-hmm. I actually felt better about that, that I could let that go. The problem was that I couldn't say anything about it, because everybody's still talking about heaven. And everybody's still talking about God taking him, and he's an angel, and all these religious things. And I didn't think that. So I read more. It's pretty much been my answer to everything in life. When things get hard, I tend to just stick my face in a book and pretend like there's nothing else going on. So I read books like, I started with the science one. I read God No by Penn Jillette, which is a bit of a ride. I read God Delusion, Christopher Hitchens. I went through the whole gambit of all
The
that kind
whole
of stuff.
the Atheism 101 reading list.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I got kind of angry. I got to say, I think for a little while, I spent some time as a militant atheist because I felt so liberated. I felt like I was able to finally be like, you know what, man, I don't have to pretend to believe this shit anymore. And that's really okay. The problem for me was really finding acceptance. And I had felt like I had sort of already done that dance, pun intended, I guess, because I had to find acceptance as a dancer. And now I had to find acceptance as a non-believer. And that was actually worse. Like,
interesting. Talk about that a little bit.
When you challenge people's beliefs, I think it really damages them to the core. I think it really challenges them to actually look inside themselves and ask, is it fair that a child would have a devastatingly painful disease for 3/4 of their life? Is it fair that, a good portion of the world is starving or, being abused or hurt in these horrific ways? And there's supposed to be some supreme being that has control over all of this. I think that's really scary. And I think one of the scariest things is coming to the acceptance that there may not be an afterlife, that this is all we have. And for me, that was also very liberating because it made me really value every moment that I have alive. It made me say, you know what, man, it's really rough right now, but I'm alive and that's what I got. And I got this time and that's all I got. And one day there'll just be nothing. So I better do what I need to do right now.
I've been telling people I need a nihilist meditation app that just tells you how insignificant you are in a very gentle and soothing voice. I'd buy that in a minute. Can we talk a little bit about kind of how the atheism and the sex work intersected? Because I have this, tell me if I'm off base here, or maybe I'm entering into a territory that you don't know about, but I have this idea that people probably assume that a lot of sex workers are atheists, and there is this natural progression between, hey, I'm an atheist, that means that I'm going to reject certain ideas about sex, and therefore maybe this industry is more interesting to me, or now an open opportunity. Do you happen to know in your time as an exotic dancer these 20 years, did you come across, were more people atheist? Were there still substantially a large number of Christian people in this industry, or how did you see that makeup falling out?
I wouldn't say there was a lot of fundamentalist Christians, like really, I wouldn't say that at all, but there's a lot of higher power, universe, spirituality, karma, all those things. There's a lot of that to the point where I wasn't necessarily comfortable all the time, really depending on the context and where I was, but I was not always comfortable saying that I didn't believe in things. And, like if I would have, and actually I read about this, I had a really, really bad night, and no crap, it was 2:30 in the morning. We had a half hour left, and some guy comes in and just gave me a few $100s, and it basically saved my night. And it was awesome. And I walked in the dressing room, and there was only one other person there. Cause seriously, like the lights were on and we were ready to go home. And I told her, cause I was so relieved, cause I was bummed. I was like, this is ridiculous. I spent all night doing nothing and making nothing. And she goes, well, somebody's looking out for you, or something like that. And I let her have that. I didn't say no. I got lucky with some drunk guy that came in the end and, happened to have some money burning a hole in his pocket and was too drunk to realize how much he spent. But I wasn't going to push back on that, because I guess I find there's a certain type of belief that's a lot more benign than feeling like you're, going to hell and those kinds of things. But I do think that lingering Christianity as people that were raised that way does contribute to the guilt that girls may feel when they get into that kind of industry. And I do think that contributes to drug and alcohol use. Because what is really prevalent is girls that feel like they need to have a few drinks, or they need to have whatever their particular chemical is, to be able to perform. And that's something that I stress in every piece of my writing about dancing is, if you can't do it sober, you need to not do it at all, period. End of story. And I think that really applies to any job now that I'm working a regular job, because the only time I've really felt like drinking is now that I'm doing office work. I'm like, wow, glass of wine at 11 o'clock in the morning sounds great.
Oh, my
Feels fair.
goodness.
Feels fair.
Well, it's COVID.
Yeah.
It's airport rules. You can drink wine at 11. That's fine.
So
that is so interesting,
Yeah.
though. So you've seen kind of, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking back to when I was still no longer fundamentalist, but still very Christian, and I would need to be drunk in order to have sex at first. Like, it needed to be this thing where I needed to loosen up, get out of my own head, stop the lingering guilty thoughts before I could even think about doing that. And it really did take an intentional stopping point and starting over to be able to realize, oh, this is something that I can do sober, and I don't need to worry about being, under the influence in any way in order to appreciate or engage in this. But that's very insightful.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of, I got actually really upset somebody, and it was when I was writing about ghosts. I was writing about because I ghost hunted for probably a good 15 years with the friend that I mentioned earlier. We went to all sorts of, and we had loads of fun, and it's the weirdest thing, never saw a ghost. Go figure.
Interesting.
What?
Did you go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania ever?
No, but New Orleans. I spent 2 weeks
Oh.
in New Orleans, and I grew up in gold country, right, where gold was first discovered. So the gold rush. So, and her family has a cabin at Donner Lake, which is a horrific story if you want to look it up. It's really actually terrible.
It gets even worse when you do research and realize they didn't even need to.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It's really bad. But there's I've been to a lot of haunted graveyards and places like that, and yeah, weird thing, never saw any of them. 15 years. But I actually got in a bit of an argument, and she stopped talking to me like indefinitely when I told her that ghosts didn't exist. She got really, really, really mad at me. And I was in the middle of writing, so it was all in my head, and I was thinking about it, and I had gone through like the research and how to debunk and kind of deconstruct why people believe in ghosts and how you fool yourself into believing in ghosts and things like that. So yeah, I really, really upset her. One of the other things that I found really prevalent is things that like the pseudosciences really seem to take hold in my particular industry, or my former industry. When it comes to chiropractors, when it comes to, the essential oils was a big thing. Those kinds of fads really take on a lot. Crystals. I have somebody that puts her stones out in the moon to charge. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh yes, I've been in that stage before. I've certainly done that more than
So, yeah, I think there's some lingering beliefs there. But I can't say that I really know a lot of former dancers that are atheists. I really don't. I know that I've probably gotten just as much, probably not as hostile, but I've definitely gotten a lot of angry comments and people that are like, oh, well, how could you believe there's just nothing? And I'm like, well, because there isn't anything that's given me any reason to believe that there is something.
That's all we have evidence for, right? Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. That is fascinating. And honestly, I could talk about this all day, but we do have a call on the line.